So, what is medicine? We have Eastern medicine, we have natural medicine, we have alternative medicine, we have complementary medicine. There's so many different terms to describe medicine, but they're all kind of a little bit wishy-washy. One of my mentors had a really good saying. He always looked at us and said, it doesn't matter whether it's Eastern or Western medicine. He said, if it works, it's medicine. If it doesn't, it's not. So I'm not a big proponent of putting these clear lines between this is Western and this is Eastern. I see it more as medicine happens on the spectrum between all these different imaginary lines. And I really look at whether it works or whether it doesn't work. For most people, when they think about medicine, they think about going to the drugstore and picking up Advil or Benadryl. They think prescription drugs. They think about going to the doctor and getting procedures done. But one thing that hardly anybody thinks of as medicine anymore is food. And when you think about it, food really is the most basic medicine that we take every single day. Because once the umbilical cord is cut, every single biochemical process in our body necessary for growth depends not only on the food we eat, but also the ability of our body to get all the nutrients out of the food, to metabolize what we eat, and then be able to use these parts that they get from plants or from meat and from the foods we eat to work within our body and do repairs or grow and keep us healthy. When it comes to food, just like food can be medicine, food can also be poison. And the key to that is we need to stick with foods that are medicine. So how do we know the difference? A simple way to describe it is we have food and we have food-like substances. Food, real food, generally doesn't come with labels. Real food will be on the edges of the supermarket. So real foods would be fruits and vegetables. Like you see what you get, you don't need a label telling you this is an apple and everything is in it. So it's really just foods that we see and immediately recognize as food, and we know what it is. So it could be fruits, it could be vegetables, it's meats, it's dairy and bread and bakery items. Like those are all things that we kind of understand. And if you stick with simple breads, the ones that don't have all the chemicals in it, which is really just water, salt, yeast, and flour, it can be a pretty healthy food as well. So real foods are foods that either are an ingredient and don't come with ingredients, or if they are somewhat processed like bread, when you read over the label, you will be able to identify every single ingredient as a food that you may find in a pantry or in the refrigerator or anywhere in your kitchen. Toxic foods are the highly processed foods. And a lot of the stuff that you find nowadays on the shelves has nothing to do with food anymore. They're all highly processed. When you look at the ingredient list, they're sometimes this long, and half of the stuff that is listed you can't pronounce, let alone have an idea of what it is. For food manufacturers, adding chemicals to food and creating these food-like substances have two major points. For one, it's cheaper to put cheap chemicals into it than to use high-quality raw ingredients. But also, they create highly addictive foods. They put chemicals in it like MSG that enhance flavor. They add sugar to it. They add salt to it. So we're putting all these flavorings in, so things that will get us addicted to these substances, which will ensure continued sales of the products. So in general, if you want to look at the difference between real food, food-like substances, medicine food, and toxic foods, as long as it is a real food and it doesn't have any chemicals or any crazy stuff in it, that in general is a food you can look at as medicine, or at least as a good basis for your body to keep itself maintained. When we look at food as medicine, of course, the upper level is just to make sure that you have foods that are not too highly processed or that have too many chemicals in it. But it goes further than that because every individual's constitution is different. We live in different areas. Like, for example, somebody who lives high up in the mountains will have a different diet than somebody who lives on the North Pole, than somebody who lives in the desert. So what constitutes food that is medicinal for an individual person doesn't only depend on the food they're eating and where it was grown and how it was grown and whether it has chemicals in it or not, but it also depends on finding the right foods that match the energetics that we have. So for example, overly sweet foods have a tendency to create dampness. Now, if somebody has problems with like damp rashes, and they may have to go to the bathroom 6, 7, 8 times at night, or they have discharge, vaginal discharge. For those people, it would not be very good to have a diet that's heavy in sweeter foods because that will only add to the problem. So in that case, you would want to go with things that help dry up the dampness a little bit. Same thing if you are a 50-year-old woman going through menopause and you're sweating up, you have night sweats and hot flashes and you feel like you're on fire the entire time. Having jalapenos, drinking coffee or tea, which are both considered, black tea, which are both considered energetically warm, will not be medicinal foods for them because they will actually add more fire to an already too hot running system. So when it comes to food as medicine, the first rule is always make sure it's real food and not chemicals. If it has a label, make sure you understand every single ingredient that is listed on the label as a food that you could recognize and point out. And then as we're going through this course, you will learn more about how to look for your individual needs and what the specific qualities are that your body needs. And hopefully you will be able to pick up enough that you can, in general, pick foods in the future that will be better for your own constitution.